Hey, this is George Dunlap. Getting ready to interview my good friend Steve Thompson. Steve Thompson and I have known each other for a long time. Uh, Steve and I both traveled. He in the East Coast, me in the Midwest, and I bumped into a couple times. Worked shows with him, and I've had a pleasure working with Steve. Steve is part of my legacy series of podcasts and interviews that I'm releasing now. As you know, I've got a couple in the back room working on right now. One with John Plummer with Moomers, that would be out here soon, and then working on one with Deborah and Carl Cheney. But this is all on what I call the legacy series of operators in our industry. Not only are they shop operators, but they're manufacturers. Steve manufacturing ice cream equipment, batch machines, and I think that you all will enjoy that. So sit back. Steve is just about ready to join us. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah to all of our friends. It's about a 45 minute, I think it's about an hour, excuse me. But Steve has a lot to tell everybody. He's got good news. He's some important news was announced this October, this past 2024. He'll tell us about that. But more importantly, he's going to tell us about the journey of the Thompson family. How the heck are you, my friend?
Oh, just terrific. Enjoying Florida. So many of my friends have said over the years, when are you going to retire and take it easy? And I say, what? Move to Florida? I'm already here.
But the irony is you said take it easy. I mean, I started doing these podcasts here in the process of transitioning from one journey to the next, I guess. And a friend of and started to do these what I'm calling them legacy podcast. And my wife said, "Well, what do you define as a legacy?" And I said, "Well, the point is to have conversations like this with those that have been in the industry plus 20 years." And I'm going through my homework here early this morning, going over your website, and I said I'm going to have to give Steve Thompson's family like 3 stars because we got like over 110 years or something there. So if anybody has a story to tell, it's Steve. It's your family. I mean, so. Um, Let me just essentially just say we got a couple of things to talk about today, and the news that came out in October, but we're going to talk about that last because I
Okay.
think the thing that's important is your story. Is tell the folks. I mean, you and I had the pleasure to meet when visited you in Brooklyn, Bronx, excuse me, in the
Right.
Bronx, probably back in the early '80s. I was just I had come out of school. My family, my dad was in the ice cream manufacturing business. He was with a company called Swift Ice Cream back in the day,
Hmm.
and there was a little plant in northwestern Ohio, a little town called Defiance, and he manufactured 3-gallon bulk, and he did Wendy's and McDonald's shake mix for like the Midwest here.
Wow.
And so when we got into it in the late 70s, one thing led to the next, and I guess my ego, which you have no idea what that's all about, do you? I mean, ego's a good thing for both of us. But Dad said, "Hey, you want to go out and sell ice cream machines?" And I said, I had a kind of a couple bucks in my hip pocket from college and had a vehicle, so I said, what a way to get out and see the world, which I think your story is all about that too, right?
Yeah, and when did you first who'd you first work for? Or when we met,
It was
was it
me.
Alpha
I
Dynamics?
graduated in '77 from college here in Bowling Green, over in Ohio, and
Okay.
I went to work for George Dunlap of George Dunlap. My dad and I. So I was a sole wolf, if you will. Went out. Uh, I think the trip. I was out selling at that time Stolting soft ice cream machines, the pressurized machines,
Uh-huh.
and I think I probably came out to visit you. The time. See, I probably came out it had to be in the late 70s because I came out and bought sprinkles from probably one of your associates in the neighborhood that was doing red, white, and blue sprinkles. I can't
Hmm.
remember their name at the time. And so I had to, I loaded up, I had a Ford LTD four-door that when I bought it, I put air shocks in it. So when I would fill up the trunk with sprinkles, I mean, that thing was bigger than a semi truck, really. Yeah. So I came out to see you. So you were very gracious to see me. You were very you gave me the story. You showed me the showroom. And essentially, what I've come to understand about Steve Thompson is that Steve Thompson is gracious to talk ice cream with pretty much anybody and has a lot to say. So let's turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about the history and the tremendous excitement that you've shared for these many years.
Well, I have to point out that back then you and I were we were salesmen and proud of the term, and we were driving around our territory and knocking on doors, making cold calls. Um, you said how you put the air shocks in your car. I had a Volkswagen Super Beetle, and I ripped out the passenger seat, the front passenger seat, and put a Emery Thompson slush machine, a countertop slush machine, in where the seat was. And I would drive up to a pizza parlor with a 100-foot extension cord
Oh
and
my.
run this machine from my Volkswagen Super Beetle and give out free Italian ice or free slush rather. And that's how I started going out or, going around through Brooklyn.
Right, right.
Made a terrible mistake with it though, because I advertised, we had the owner of the store advertise free slush today only. And he was right across from an elementary school. And
Oh
so
my.
we're giving out at 3 o'clock free slush, and the kids are all lined up and it's great. And we ran out. And those lovely little kids turned really pretty nasty when we ran out of free slush. I think I remember a few rocks being thrown towards the windows, but it was a good sales technique.
Well, we both grew up in that time, and I'm sure you had very similar stories to mine. As when I was a little kid in elementary school, on Saturdays, my dad would grab me. Since I was the oldest, and he would take me down to the plant,
Yeah.
and then he would set me, and he had his paperwork to do, and he would set me down next to him with a bunch of letterhead and crayons, and he said, "Don't move." And then when he looked the other way, I would get up and wander around the plant. Of course, nobody's there, so you get this beautiful, facility that has stainless steel piping. You know what plants look like, and
Yeah.
it's just a fantasy world.
That's where I learned how to drive a forklift. I was about 10 years old, and Dad said, "Don't touch anything." So he's upstairs in the offices, and I'm on the factory floor, teaching myself how to drive a forklift with a clutch.
Well,
I
how do you
made it a
learn?
few things.
How do you learn, right?
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
great fun.
so Emery Thompson's been around, I think, 100. How many years did you say?
122 years next week.
Oh my goodness! Well, happy birthday! And so you had mentioned slush machine, and I think at the time I remember uh, some of them. But you went from what breadth of product to today? You're pretty much your breadth is all batch machines. So you've had quite a journey determining your strengths and moving forward.
Yeah, we used to build soft ice cream machines. The irony of it was our countertop soft ice cream machine ended up on every nuclear sub in the fleet.
Oh my!
And I was down in the U.S. Virgin Islands with my family, my father and my mother and sister, and we got invited by the commander of the ship to come on board. And there was this Emery Thompson machine, which made no sense at all because it was the noisiest thing on earth. And he's telling us about how the floors are all sitting on rubber so that they can run silent, run deep. And I'm turning to Dad, going, I hope they don't turn this thing on when they're, trying to hide out somewhere in the world. But the captain said they only turn it on when they're in port. But we built soft ice cream machines, slush machines. Always the main business was batch freezers. My grandfather invented the mechanized batch freezer in 1905, and that pretty much started the industry. Because prior to that, all ice cream was made on hand cranked salt and ice machines.
Right.
And he invented a better way of doing it and making the exact same product. And that's what started the company. And basically every batch freezer out there is based on his original patents.
Well, it's been And people always say, what's the best ice cream machine? And I always say it's the ice cream machine company that answers their phone when you need a question answered.
That's true.
You know,
That's the important one.
there's no other thing else. There's nothing else out there. I mean, you see that picture behind me, and that's my family, my daughter, my grandchildren, my wife, and my sons over there. And I haven't been blessed with three generations, but my grandson, it will be the third generation ice cream consumer.
Uh,
Um,
that's
but
fantastic.
but the Emery Thompson, I mean, when your folks went from hand crank, which I think many of today's generation may not fully understand, to what you have today, let them know. Tell them what that. I mean, that really meant a lot when they came up with that.
It did because my grandfather, Emery Thompson, people had funny names back then, and Emery was his first name,
Right.
spelled Emery. And he was working in the largest department store in the United States down on 14th Street, excuse me, in New York City. It took up practically all of 14th Street. And back then, there were no ice cream parlors in 1905. Your ice cream came from either a pharmacy, like you see in Back to the Future movies,
Right.
or it came from the basement of a department store like Macy's or Bloomingdale's or Lord and Taylor's. You'd go into the basement and they sold housewares and chocolates and other candy and ice cream. And in 1903, he did $100,000 gross sales, which today would be 1.2 million. And
Yes.
so there's an old expression that I never understood, but my father tried to explain it to me. Necessity is the mother of invention. So his necessity was he was working long hours turning a crank on this bucket of rock salt and ice to make 3 or 4 quarts of ice cream.
Yes.
And he went home to his house in New Rochelle, a suburb of New York, and invented a better way. And that better way was a freezing tank filled with salt water and a vertical cylinder. And he pumped the salt water around the cylinder and made that all mechanized. And that got the world's first patent for an ice cream machine. And that
If,
started the company.
then he probably lost that the arm wrestling championships from then on, didn't
Yes, I never got to meet him, but I'm sure, it's like you and I would always say, don't ever get in a fight with anyone who scoops ice cream because they got a bicep that'll, kill you.
he? Oh my goodness gracious! So he went from, and again that as a kid, we would make ice cream at home too, the same way. I mean, we had I think the wooden bucket and you fill it up full, and it was. People don't realize also the opportunity, and I think that's still a great tool, training tool for anybody in the business to show, to have a conversation with the students about how to make ice cream because it also shows people that ice cream is a combination of a liquid mix
Mhm.
and air. You know, I try to let people think that it's like when a cake rises. I mean, air is not a bad thing, but
Right.
like anything out there, anything that can be added to excess can cause problems, right, Steve?
Absolutely. But the thing is, nobody ever walks out of an ice cream parlor and says, "Oh, that was the best air content I ever had," or "I can't wait to come back tomorrow because their butterfat level was just right." We eat flavor. I tell people, yes, air is important. The quality of the cream is important, but what really matters is the flavor. Baskin Robbins, when I was growing up, Dad made terrible ice cream. He and Uncle June, Emery Thompson Jr., their idea of making ice cream on an old chain drive, Emery Thompson, was if it takes 8 minutes to make ice cream, let's run it for an hour and a half and see if we can break the chain or anything else. It was always vanilla. They always brought this home.
Right.
It was overchurned. It was horrible. It was underflavored because they knew nothing, excuse me, about making ice cream. But that's all we ever got. So when Dad would say, "Let's go out for ice cream," we'd go to Baskin Robbins. And it wasn't the most favorite ice cream in the world, but Baskin Robbins did have it right back then. It was all about the flavor.
Right.
You had a mint chip, and it was a strong minty flavor. Or as I tell people, I am a failure at making ice cream if I hand you a pale pink ice cream and you say, "Oh, this is delicious. What is it?" and you can't tell it's red raspberry as opposed to strawberry, I haven't put enough flavor in.
Right.
So yeah, I invented 24 years ago what we call the infinite overrun control, which allows us with just one machine, instead of buying a gelato machine and a homemade machine, you can buy one Emery Thompson and it completely controls the air content. So if you want a thick, dense ice cream like Haagen-Dazs, who I put in business when I was in 1972,
Right.
I was young. If you
There.
want that, you can make it on our machine. If you want to make a nice big portion of homemade ice cream, you can make it on. If you want to do dairy free, which is a different air content. Yeah, so the air content does matter for the final product, but it really comes down to the flavor. Great flavors, great fresh flavors, and you'll have a great ice cream.
It's kind of funny because I tell the story at some of my seminars that, flavor is so important that when my dad would take myself and my two brothers, his three sons, to the ice cream store, and you can tell where he was coming from. He would walk up, he'd drive up to the store, and then we would have to stay in the car, and he would say, "What flavor would you like? Vanilla, vanilla, or vanilla?" And his point was make your decision fast. And there was only one time I think I was probably acting like a smart aleck. I can't imagine that. And I said, probably strawberry. And he came back and he had only two vanilla cones. And I said, "Where's mine?" He goes, "They didn't have strawberry."
You
So,
know, he probably did that because he was in the business. And we have a franchise up in the Northeast, Carvel, or a
right,
lot of people have heard of Carvel. And I knew Tom Carvel, and crotchety old man, but
right,
very successful. And Tom used to say that he sends his spies out to test his ice cream parlor's vanilla ice cream. Because in his exact words, if they're cheating on the vanilla, you can be darn sure they're cheating on the chocolate, which
yeah,
costs a lot more. So he
yes,
always judged his store. So when I go out and, people say, "Who's your favorite ice cream?" I always say, "Well, it's mine because it keeps me out of trouble." But I also order vanilla because vanilla is an important flavor, and you can tell what the rest of the store is going to be like. You can't mask anything through vanilla ice cream.
no, and the taste, from when we were children to, our grandchildren now, the flavoring profiles have changed, the dynamics have changed. And, with so much change going on out there, Emery Thompson hasn't changed one thing. And the one thing is they haven't changed making a quality product.
Right.
I mean, tell us about, that vision, because like you said, you started out with your ancestors had a different philosophy, but inadvertently in that philosophy, they stumbled or they continued to build something that was supported by the family.
We've always built a made in the USA machine, first in the Bronx for 100 years, just down the road from Yankee Stadium. In fact, I sold our 40,000 square foot building to George Steinbrenner to become a parking garage. And that's what got us down to Florida. So thank you, George, wherever you are.
There you go.
And that got us to Florida when I moved us now 21 years ago.
Right.
But the quality has always remained that we're going to build a machine that has an average lifespan of 40 years, not something that's going to break down every 6 months or need to be replaced in 5 years because all ice cream equipment is pricey,
Right.
but you want to get your money's worth. So we built the reputation of the company on the quality of the machine, and we still do that. And that will always be the hallmark of Emery Thompson of building a very high quality machine, highest materials. We have a door on the machine that's all cast stainless steel, and it'll last 100 years.
Right.
There's nothing on it to wear out.
Well, I think one of the things that, you have your story, your legacy. There's so much relevancy to what your journey has been, and I think for people, young people, or people just getting into business, the first question they always ask is number one, who do I contact that can help me learn ice cream? Number two, because like you said, nobody wants to buy something and have it break down on them. Who do I talk? Who can I call that can give me the straight scoop, if you will? And we're in this conversation now because you're journeying on to another opportunity. But Emery Thompson. I mean, I remember it. When I go out and make phone sales calls to people, uh, they would the term and it was used at first. I thought it was a negative, but they would call it the boat anchor. But I had a fellow. I think it was one of the guys out in California that had the 40, and he said, "No, you don't understand, George. We say that with love and admiration because it's going to be here. It does the job, and when it does break down, it's going to take which it probably won't." He said, "It is the heart of our operation." And anchor is because we anchor our quality of product in the heart of this machine. And I've always over time tried to find other things, but you have continuously told your customers what they expectations are. You continuously supported the product, and you've had a lot of different products over the years to manufacture for. A lot of people say, "Well, I need a yogurt machine or a custard machine." Tell us how Emery Thompson satisfies the different types of mixes, or is that necessarily the truth?
The federal government says that if you want to call this product ice cream, it has to be 10% dairy fat in the product. So, and dairy fat consists of whole milk, cream, and what I call a secret ingredient, skim milk powder. Skim
Right.
milk powder is heavy cream with all the fat removed, so you get all the good stuff. So we start off with the basis that ice cream is 10% fat or higher. Now, for example, Haagen-Dazs is 16%. And it doesn't sound much, 10 to 16. That is a big, big difference.
Right.
If you look at whole milk, it's 4% fat. And if you look at low fat milk, it's 2% fat. But if you taste whole milk versus low fat milk, it's a world of difference. So a 2% change from 10 to 12, 12 to 14 makes a big difference in the fat content. But what I learned moving down to Florida, which was something I didn't expect, why is Florida low in ice cream sales compared to, say, Boston? Boston's one of the highest. And the difference is we New Yorkers come down and we're an annoying bunch of people to begin with. We have a terrible attitude problem and we're proud of it. You got a problem with that?
No.
But we come down here and we brought our high fat attitudes to Florida, Texas, Louisiana,
Right.
Arkansas. And on a hot day, if you eat 16% butterfat and go out in that 90-degree sun with 100% humidity, you're going to sweat to death.
Right.
It's going to give you a stomach ache. So and that's why ice cream sales weren't very high in Florida. So what I did once I figured that out was I lowered down to the federal minimum and said, we're going to promote in Florida 10% fat,
Right.
which would be considered in our day, George, that would be considered a junk ice cream.
Right.
But with like Baskin-Robbins, a low fat with a lot of good flavoring, you've got a fantastic product.
Right.
So someone calls up from Boise, Idaho and says, well, where can I get 10% fat? And I say, well, you shouldn't. You're in a colder climate. You ought to be running a 12 or a 14,
Right.
maybe even a 16. So we adapt the fat to the area
The market.
you're
Yep.
living in. But then comes along Gen X, Gen Z, and Millennial, and they, for different reasons, various reasons, are not in love with our high-fat ice creams the way we are. And they've just completely changed the market. We're now producing something called dairy-free ice cream.
Right.
There's different ways to do it, but I do it either out of coconut or oat. I think they have the best flavor. Coconut has a background taste, so it makes it hard to make vanilla because vanilla and coconut are fighting for world dominance.
Right.
But the oat is completely neutral. And it gives you a great tasting product, tastes, 99% like ice cream, but without the fat in there. And I just love those three groups because my average customer used to be 65. husband and wife. They're getting ready to retire early and fulfill their life dream of opening an ice cream parlor.
Right.
And we see a lot of that, and we put them in business. We make them successful. But the bulk of my customers now are 24 to 39, a whole different younger generation. Instead of 2,000 square foot stores, we're doing 750 square feet, 900 square feet, because the rents are expensive. They don't have a large cash reserve, and they don't have the credit line built up that someone in their
Right.
60s does. So we're doing a bare bones store. We're selling 10 to 12 flavors instead of 32 or 30. Cut that back down and just make and a flavor of the week or a
Right.
couple of flavors of the week. We're doing hard ice cream, dairy free, and fresh fruit sorbets. And just fantastic people to work with because they are so enthusiastic. They're not afraid of 10, 12, 14-hour days. And they're not going to open just one store. In the next 3 years, they'll open 5 stores.
Right.
And so just a really exciting market to work with. And so they now have an ice cream parlor or a frozen dessert business that covers all age groups and all products that are hard scooped.
Right. 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 It's interesting. We moved to Miami in 1960. My dad was transferred from Virginia market to Miami, Florida at the plant, and we lived South Miami. We lived at that time north of Key Largo, Homestead Air Force Base in that area. But he traveled, and so from 1960 to 1970, and then in 1970 we moved to northwestern Ohio. So, and what you're talking about on the fat and the temperature is so true. The body, when it's hot, doesn't want carbs or wants reduced carbs. And that's why the South for so long till you move down there was primary what people always call a popsicle market.
Yes. Yeah.
Popsicle and margaritas, and it was because of high temperature and high humidity, we wanted sugar and fluid. You had to drink something. And up north, it was just the opposite. But then along came two things. Number one, Steve Thompson moved down, and number two, air conditioning became more dominant.
Yes.
But still, you're not going to eat, like you said, you're not going to have a 16% scoop of Haagen-Dazs vanilla when it's 98 degrees and high humidity, because you're not going to go back for a second visit. That's the challenge. And as you know, nobody goes on vacation with just one customer one time, never coming back. And so it again, that's the key with your company and your philosophy. You have adapted over time to different markets and different customers.
And George, one of the biggest adaptations none of us saw coming, which was COVID.
Right.
And COVID did a lot of things, and bad also made some good
Right.
improvements in
Right.
the frozen dessert business. Number one, we cut it down to one dipping cabinet of flavors instead of a lot.
Right.
I do a lot of stores that don't use the dipping cabinet, what we call a visual display cabinet, where you
Hmm.
can see the ice cream. We have it the old-fashioned way, where can I help you? And then I turn my back on you and I scoop your ice cream from
Right.
a solid cabinet. What that did is people didn't want to stand, they don't mind a line, but they want that line to move. To this day, some of us get paranoid if a lady or a man and 3 people in front of us sneezes. I got to get out of this line. They've got
Right.
dengue fever or beriberi
Right.
or who knows what, bird flu. So we want the line to move fast, and we don't want people going, oh, gee, do I want the mint chip or do I want the salted caramel?
Right.
I contend that, like your father, everybody coming into that store already knows what their favorite flavor is. Mine's mint chip. My wife Paula and my office manager Paula is coconut. That's probably what we're going to buy. But if you spend too much time looking at it, it slows down the line, and
Yep.
we've got to get them in that line and through. The other thing that happened is I had over 40,000 stores around the world that were closed because of COVID in 121 countries.
Yeah.
And we needed a way to have them make money. And so I came up with, I mean, it wasn't totally my idea. It was just
Right.
an application of a good idea. A good idea is selling ice cream in pints. The application was, let's hire someone younger than us to run social media and advertise that the store is closed, but the owner's there making ice cream,
Right.
and you can text in your order of ice cream in pints, which we have made at the machine, slowed down the drive so we can fill them right at the Emery Thompson, freeze them rock solid, 20 below zero. And you place an order for a mint chip and a coconut, and we run it out to your car. That kept all those stores back open. And the good result of it is now when I do a store, I also have people go out and buy a $300 chest freezer,
Right.
fill it with pints of ice cream, and a little sign off to the side from the serving line that says, take out pints. So Paula calls me up and says, hey, we got the Thompsons coming for dinner tonight. Stop off at the supermarket and get some ice cream.
Right.
I can't stop at the supermarket because I've got two golden retrievers in the back. They're sitting in my SUV, my big ass SUV. And if I go into the store, I'm going to lose the dogs and the car. And it's going to take me 15 minutes. But I come to your store because I know you have this line of takeout pints. I run in, I grab a coconut, I grab a mint chip, I put them on the counter. There's no one there. The server over here who's got a line says, excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back. Comes over to me. You want a receipt? No. You want a bag? No. Slide your card. I slide my card. I'm in and out in 45 seconds.
Right.
10 years ago, the next person in line over that they were serving would have said, did you see that bum? He came in here and he cut in line in front of me. Nowadays, they say, hey, did you see that guy? I can see his two golden retrievers out in the car there. And he came in, he got ice cream, and he was out of here in 45 seconds. I could do that next Tuesday when the Thompsons are coming for dinner.
Right.
And it's opened up a whole new market. You're not only selling them a cone, you're selling them takeout pints, frozen rock solid so they can get it home. And you're selling them twice in one day. It's terrific.
All right, we're going to shift into a topic that's very important right now. Why Steve finds tremendous value when he can say "made in the USA." It's been his family's creed since they started the company. Emery Thompson, "Made in the USA," is explained to all of us by Steve Thompson. We typify a man, a family representing American product with tremendous pride and tremendous loyalty to the land that is taking care of you. And I think we've got to be able to find value in that again today, don't we?
It's it's the most important thing in business, that and customer service. Buying American is just tantamount to us. In fact, we're at an airport in Brooksville, Florida, north of Tampa. And so some of the services, like sending the steel frame that makes up the machine, we send it out to another business in the airport to powder coat it to make it last forever. So we buy in Brooksville, we buy in Florida, and we buy in the United States. And, sure, you're going to get a nut or a screw or a wire coming from China, but the key components are American made. And what that means is, Microsoft is always famous for, oh, we don't support that version anymore. We can't do that. I mean, I've got people who I told 40 years ago that we'll have parts for your machine, and we have to have those parts. So yes, we're making changes to improve the machines all the time to improve the quality. I've never made a change to cut cost. I've always made changes to improve it because that's what my father and my uncle did. But the American sources are the best. Little things like copper tubing. Everybody else uses aluminum because aluminum is 1/10 the cost. But aluminum rots out after about 7 years. It's great for building bridges, but not so good for freon gas. But the copper is inert. It's going to be there forever. And simplicity is important. Even though we have a digital control panel, even that's simple because it says, what would you like to do? Make ice cream or ask questions about running the machine. You know,
Right.
2 buttons.
Right.
And then you have this list of different flavors, different products: homemade, dairy-free, super premium, custard, gelato. And you just push a button and it's going to take you. So yes, we do have a lot of technology in the machine, but it's all very, very simple, and it's all American design and American made. And that's key to our business, is keeping that quality up.
Well, at the same time, we have to support our community, and not necessarily at the expense of the world, but we are, you know, I think we have forgotten that that Made in America still does resonate throughout the world as a quality product. They can count on an American made product being what it says it is. And with that, you've had to, you've been trustee of a brand, for the last many years, and you've had to, I'm sure you've had meetings where people would come into and say, Steve, we can do this cheaper, or Steve, we can do that better, or Steve, we can do it this way. But I always get the idea that when you had a meeting, you were always trying to figure out how to make a product better. How has the design of the Emery Thompson, has it really changed that much?
The overall concept hasn't changed, and that's the beauty of it, is it's still making the same ice cream that you could buy in 1910. What people really refer to as old-fashioned homemade ice cream. It's still making that ice cream because the basic mechanics of the machine haven't changed. A batch freezer is like, people say, well, what's a batch freezer? Well, it's like your oven. We could call your oven in your kitchen a batch oven. You take a tray of tater tots and put it into the oven. And when it's ready after 20 minutes, you don't take out one tater tot at a time. You take the whole tray out. That's a batch of tater tots. We're going to put the dairy blend, milk, cream, sugar, skim milk, in with some butterscotch sauce and some salted pecans. And we're going to make a great ice cream. And when it's ready in 8 minutes, we take the entire batch out and then go on to another flavor. So the mechanics of that haven't really changed. The materials have changed. They've gotten better and stronger and cleaner. And that's the main thing that we look at. Always looking to improve the machine, but never cut the quality, because that's what the reputation is.
Well, you built your reputation not only around your machine, but you've also built it around your team, because you know that you can't answer. I mean, I know I like your promo on the website says, we're here 24/7, and then you put a little asterisk and say, well, not everybody's here 24/7, which is good. But you said, but we're here, and then and then you've made it a personal promise, to your customers to help. And one thing that Emery Thompson has done over the years is you've taken your team and presented. The ice cream show was just last month, and your team, went there with an image and smiles on her face, and how have you found that journey to bring a team up to date? And as an individual like yourself, with your energy and passion, it's not always easy to allow others to tell your story.
And Emery Thompson would not be a company, and I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for our employees.
Right.
They are the heart, and that's what a business needs to understand. Is the business is the vehicle, but it's the generator of the reputation and the quality of the product and everything is the employees, from the person driving the forklift to answering the phones, to Christy Brown, our Vice President of Sales and Marketing, coming up with new ice cream flavors. Everybody is an integral part. And I am known to run it as a benevolent dictatorship, which means I take in ideas from everywhere, and I let them run with them until I have to say no, because that idea just isn't working.
Right.
But we love to try out new things, and it is all about customer service. We're very proud of the fact that we answer the phone by the second ring, and you get a live person, who knows what they're talking about. So you're not going to get switched from this line to someone else to please leave a message. And yeah, I am here 24 hours a day. My wife insists that I sleep a bit, but I love the business. And my father lived to be 100, and he worked until he was 92.
All right.
And the only reason he quit working is he was driving from Connecticut into the Bronx every day, and he was getting lost. And NYPD knew him so well, they'd call up and say, "Hey, we got Teddy over on Bruckner Boulevard. What do you want us to do?" And they say, "Well, that's only one stop off the Cross Bronx. Escort him in." And or he'd get lost over by the
Right.
Triangle Bridge, and then we'd say, "No, that's too far. Just head him north, send him back to Connecticut." So it's a family tradition, and I will be working at it in one variation or another for as long as I can possibly do it,
Well,
because I love what I do.
that brings us to the point that to where we are today. And like I said, in October, I was brought to my attention, and I went back and reread it, and you and I briefly discussed putting this together a couple weeks ago, and you said, but George, remember one thing: I'm not leaving. Why don't you? I'm going to be quiet and let you tell. I think it's important that Steve Thompson, conveys to the world, because that's your market. What you and your company have put together for a continuation plan, and what the customer, what the folks don't need to be concerned about, and what these exciting changes always bring exciting opportunities for everybody.
I've been making this promise to my customers for as long as I can remember. I've been working. I started when I was 16,
Right.
so I've been here 53 years and working. And I always made the promise that Emery Thompson will be here to help you, and we will have parts for your machines. So when we say you're buying a machine that's going to last 40 years, we're going to be supporting it. And to further that, I knew that, I'm probably not going to be here another 40 years. I think the Almighty has other future plans for me. There's an ice cream store up there somewhere that needs to be run.
Oh no,
But,
another New Yorker up there making ice cream.
yeah. So I did start looking around 2 years ago to see how we can. And the other problem we had is Emery Thompson is getting larger and larger every day.
Right.
Our market share is just phenomenal and continuing to grow. And because of that, we needed more help. And more help isn't always just money, and it's not just adding more people.
Right.
You need more resources, more outlets to be able to service the machines, to be able to supply parts. There's a lot of integral parts of running a large business. And so I started looking around for an appropriate person to take over Emery Thompson and keep it running, for the next 100 years. And I looked at a lot of different companies around the world. I looked at what they call mergers and acquisitions companies, where they come in and they're bankers and they invest in you. But the problem with them is they make all the promises in the world, and they have a track record of, after 3 years, stripping the company of all its assets and then selling it off and then moving on to the next one. And I couldn't let that happen to my family's business because of these 40,000 customers depending on it. So after a lot of careful looking around, I kept coming back to the same company. There is a large company that's based in Chicago, has I think over 120 businesses, and a lot of them are names in the food industry that you would know,
Right.
big name brands, and their company is called MIDDLEBY. And the one thing that one of our best competitors and also friends was Taylor Freezer.
Yes.
And Middleby bought Taylor Freezer about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I spoke to my friends at Taylor. There's other companies that they own that I called up that I knew were our size. And I said, "What's it like working with Middleby?" And this one gentleman, I won't mention his company, but he's on every Taylor soft ice cream machine, his components. And he said, working with Middleby is really fantastic. They let you run the company. It stays there. You're not a division of. you are Emery Thompson separate, or you're Taylor separate, or all these different companies that run separately, but they can do things for us. If we buy $500,000 worth of condensing units, that's the engine that makes the cold in the machine.
Right.
If we buy $500,000 worth of them a year, they're buying $35 million worth of them a year for their other companies. So they can get better prices on the same made in the USA components that we're using. They can help us out with financial aspects of it. They can get better rates on loans and things like that.
Right.
And I asked this customer, I said, this owner, I said, and he's an owner that has 8 family members in it. Mine is my wife and me. And I said, what's it like working with Middleby? How did it go? And he said, they far exceeded my expectations.
Wonderful.
And that was good enough for me. And basically, we started talking a year and a half ago. We intensified it last May, and we finalized it in October. And nobody has even noticed a blip in anything because we are still Emery Thompson. There's an expression, George, that if both sides walk away from a negotiation unhappy, it's a good settlement, that you did okay. I got to tell you, with Middleby and the people there and their CEO of the corporation and everybody works for them, I could not be more thrilled. These are great people, great organization of companies, and they're going to keep Emery Thompson. They bought Emery Thompson because it was well run. 30 years ago, you bought corporations because you said, well, they're doing okay, but we can do it better. We're smarter than them. That kind of thinking hopefully has gone by the wayside for the most part. And corporations like Middleby buy companies because they are successful, they're well run, and we're just going to be able to influx them with more assistance financially, economically. We now have, we'll be able to sell through Taylor distributors as well as Emery Thompson. You can buy from us, or you can buy through Taylor. So you have the Taylor service network available. It's just going to help the company grow.
I think when I was talking to a fellow similar, which was I was in mergers and acquisitions, and he said, George, there's 2 types of companies that buy companies. Like what you just said, one method of buying is you buy somebody else's loser. You're buying the steel to sell it on the scrap market, and then that's it. You're buying a losing venture. You're just buying material. You're going to sell it off, and you're going to drain the brand if there's anything left. And that's a salvage yard, if you will. That's all. That's the one approach. Then the other approach is like Middleby. Is that Middleby is investing money into your business and other businesses because it's been successful. And Middleby, and having been in banking for many years and worked with bankers, most individuals who invest money don't want to invest it in a losing operation. They want to benefit, and they want the benefit of what that new company brings to the table, because Middleby is not a singular company. It is a company made up of, like you said, many little Emery Thompsons all over the place, which gives them unified, unique strength that they can't get as a singular company, right?
That's absolutely right. That's the exact definition of what they are. And the fun part of it was, so far in my life, I had up until Middleby, I'd only been fired once in my life. I've been a fireman in 3 different fire companies.
Right.
I had a job for one night. I was a taxi dispatcher in Winter Park, Florida, and I kept sending all the cabs to the wrong addresses. So they came in at 6 in the morning and said, you're fired. So Middleby comes in on a Thursday and says, congratulations, you've been fired. And then on Friday morning, they said, congratulations, you are now hired to run Emery Thompson, a Middleby company, for the next 3 years. So for the next 3 years, I will definitely be here. And then I'm only just getting going. I want to help three groups that I'm really enamored with. I have no military background, but I did have fire background.
Okay.
My wife's father was New York Police Department. He was NYPD. Um, we have a house over in Jupiter, Florida, which is next to Palm Beach, and I've
Yes.
convinced a lot of Paula's family to move down because, quite frankly, they're all police, fire, and military, and they have great stories.
Wonderful.
They're great fun at parties. So I'm going to be also working in the future for free to assist police, fire, and military. And the money that we got from Middleby for the company, Paul and I are committed to spend as much of that money as we can helping other people get into the ice cream business. You know, we each have a car. I've got a small boat. You know, we've got a couple of houses. You know,
Right.
Paula doesn't fly, so we don't have, you know, we're not going off to Europe for, 6 months. So we're going to devote our efforts of what we do right now to help people for free get into the business.
Well, good. Well, we're going to wind this thing down here a couple more minutes here. I'm going to get you back to work because I know you're an early riser. But
Absolutely.
I think this is part of what I'm trying to convey with these types of podcasts and YouTube is that, and that's my mission is to give back to an industry, to give back to a group of people that, I had no idea when I was going to school, that I would be having the opportunity and a career through ice cream. I think somebody said, well, that's a pretty nice lifestyle. I said, it really is. I said, the worst thing that happens in my business is that I may serve a scoop of ice cream to a child. She drops that ice cream. I see her face. I go right back and I grab another scoop and I take it right back out to her. And she has that smile on her face.
Yeah.
And I think, you and I deal in smiles.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other things we could do. But my mission, and I'm going to come back at you over the years to get back with you because I think we bring smiles to operators and we also bring comfort knowing that, when you're not the only one out there in the battle, it does gives you comfort that, oh, okay, Steve Thompson says that this is something that is a challenge, but he brings to the table a sincere approach how to get through the storm. And I think the thing what I picked up from you is that yes, Middleby is now part of it, but the customer still is your boss. You got a partnership with Middleby, and you'll be working with Taylor. Customers can buy and the customers can still get their product the way that you can get it to them the best way, right?
Yep. And the nicest thing about our business, George, is you can be in the worst mood in the world walking into an ice cream parlor, but you're going to walk out happy. You've got an ice cream cone.
Well, I can tell you, I've had the pleasure to work with the Taylor distributors throughout the United States over the last many years. The families that operate those companies, the men and women who are out there making, face-to-face sales calls, will do. They're not going to do any disservice at all. We're having the Emery Thompson brand, in their portfolio. So I think it sounds to me that with my experience and your knowledge and what you're doing, it's the customers are going to have another win-win. Steve Thompson is going to have a great partner, and more importantly, the industry will continue to have great product to make good tasting ice cream.
Well, thank you very much. We're certainly having fun at what we do.
Well, Merry Christmas to you and your family, and thank you for this opportunity, and look forward to talking to you in the future, sir. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.